The crystal chandelier above table 7 cast diamonds across starched white linen. Amara balanced the champagne tray with practiced ease, her black uniform blending into the shadows of Lumiere's dining room. The restaurant hummed with wealth, soft laughter, the clink of silverware against bone china, the rustle of silk. Viktor Sokolov sat at the center of the table like a king. His suit was cobalt blue, tailored to perfection. 3 men flanked him, their watches catching the light. They leaned close, speaking in rapid Russian. "She's decorative, at least," one said, nodding toward Amara. "Americans hire them for optics now." Viktor laughed, low and dismissive. "Decoration, nothing more. They don't understand power." Amara's hands remained steady as she poured Dom Perignon into 4 flutes. Her face was a mask, polite, neutral, invisible. The way she'd learned to survive in rooms like this. "To the merger," Viktor said, raising his glass. "And to cleaning up old messes. Tatiana would be proud." The name hit her like ice water. She set down the bottle, leaned close to Viktor's ear. Her voice was barely a whisper, flawless Russian rolling off her tongue like silk. "Tatiana's daughter sends her regards." Viktor's glass froze halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face, leaving him gray beneath his tan. His eyes snapped to hers, wide, disbelieving, afraid. "Priятного аппетита," Amara said. "Enjoy your meal." She turned and walked toward the kitchen, her heartbeat thunder in her ears. Behind her, Viktor's voice cracked through the silence. "Who is she?" Amara Clark had been invisible her entire life. It was a skill she'd mastered early. How to move through rooms without drawing eyes, how to listen without being heard, how to survive in spaces that weren't built for her. Lumiere was one of those spaces. The Manhattan restaurant catered to billionaires, celebrities, and power brokers who treated waitstaff like furniture. Amara had worked there for 3 years, double shifts 6 days a week, saving every dollar for NYU tuition and her grandmother's medical bills. She was 24, pre-law, 1 semester from graduation. Her apartment in Washington Heights was a 6th-floor walk-up with walls so thin she could hear her neighbors' arguments in 3 languages. She took the subway at dawn and returned after midnight, her feet aching, her mind cataloging case law and contract clauses. Her mother had taught her Russian. Tatiana Clark, born Tatiana Volkova, had whispered it to her in childhood, songs and stories in a language that felt like secrets. "Language is power when they think you're powerless," her mother had said. Tatiana died when Amara was 12. Pneumonia, the certificate said. But Amara remembered the bruises on her mother's wrists, the way she flinched at loud noises, the phone calls she took in the bathroom with the water running. Amara never spoke Russian at Lumiere. She let the wealthy guests mock her in French, Italian, Mandarin. She smiled and nodded and collected their tips, invisible, safe. Tonight everything changed. She stood in the service station, refilling water pitchers, watching table 7 through the archway. Viktor Sokolov gestured broadly, his confidence restored. His associates laughed. They thought she was just another server who'd overheard a foreign language and tried to impress them with a memorized phrase. They didn't know she understood every word. The air felt charged, electric. Amara's fingers trembled as she straightened her apron. She'd heard her mother's name in Viktor's mouth, casual as a joke. And the way he'd said it, cleaning up old messes, made her stomach twist. 20 minutes later, Amara returned to table 7 with the appetizer course. Oysters on ice, arranged like jewels. She placed them carefully, her movements automatic, her ears tuned to the conversation. "The documents are sealed," one of Viktor's men said in Russian. His accent was Moscow, clipped and precise. 30 years. No one's looking anymore. 30 years since we cleaned up the problem, Viktor agreed. He speared an oyster, tilted it back. "The accountant. What was her name?" "Tatiana something," Volkova, another man supplied. She had access to everything. The routes, the accounts, the names. Stupid woman thought she could go to the FBI. Viktor's laugh was cold. Instead, she went to the bottom of the Hudson. Tragic accident. Single mother, child at home. Very sad. Amara's vision blurred. The tray tilted in her hands. She caught it barely, her breath shallow. And the daughter? The third man asked. Foster care, probably. Dead, maybe. Who cares? Victor shrugged. The girl was what, 10? 12? She knew nothing. The mother kept her in the dark. Smart, at least about that, they laughed. All four of them, heads thrown back, utterly unconcerned. Amara set down the tray. Her hands were shaking now, visible tremors she couldn't control. She folded them behind her back, pressing her nails into her palms until the pain cleared her head. Will there be anything else? She asked in English, her voice steady. Victor glanced at her, eyes sliding past without recognition. No, leave us. She walked away, each step measured. The dining room felt too bright, the chandelier's light drilling into her skull. Her mother's voice echoed in memory. They think we're powerless. That's when we're most dangerous. In the kitchen, Amara leaned against the walk-in freezer, the metal door cold against her forehead. Her mother hadn't died of pneumonia. She'd been murdered, and the man responsible was sitting 30 feet away, eating oysters and laughing about it. The kitchen roared around her, chefs shouting orders, pans clanging, steam rising in clouds. Amara stood motionless in the chaos, her mind replaying Victor's words on a loop. The bottom of the Hudson. She'd been 12 when her mother died. The police had called it pneumonia, complicated by a weak heart. There'd been no autopsy, no investigation. Tatiana's body was cremated within 48 hours. Her grandmother, Tatiana's mother, had wept silently at the funeral, refusing to speak about what happened. You okay? Marco, the sous chef, touched her shoulder. You look sick. I'm fine, Amara said automatically. The lie tasted like metal. She pushed through the back door into the alley. The October air bit at her skin, cold and sharp. She sucked in breath after breath, trying to slow her racing heart. Her mother used to sing to her in Russian, lullabies about birch trees and snow, about girls who were braver than they looked. Tatiana had worked as an accountant for a shipping company, or that's what she'd told Amara. Long hours, late nights, envelopes of cash hidden in the freezer behind frozen peas. Why do we hide money, Mama? Amara had asked once. In case we need to run, Tatiana had answered. They never ran. Instead, Tatiana died, and Amara went to live with her grandmother in a studio apartment in the Bronx. The envelopes of cash paid for Amara's school uniforms, her books, her future. Amara stared at her reflection in a puddle on the alley floor, distorted, dark, unrecognizable. She'd spent 12 years believing her mother had been weak, sick, defeated by poverty and bad luck. But Tatiana hadn't been weak. She'd been murdered for trying to expose a monster, and that monster was still out there, still powerful, still laughing. Amara's hands curled into fists. She turned back toward the kitchen door, her jaw set. She wasn't 12 anymore, and she wasn't powerless. That night, after her shift ended at 2 a.m., Amara took the subway to her grandmother's apartment in the South Bronx. The building was a pre-war walk-up, the hallway smelling of boiled cabbage and pine sol. She climbed 5 flights, her feet aching in her work shoes. Baba was awake, sitting in her recliner with the television on mute. At 78, she was small and brittle, her hair white as snow. But her eyes were sharp when they met Amara's. You look like you've seen a ghost, Baba said in Russian. Tell me about Mama, Amara said. The truth. Baba's face closed like a door. Your mother died of pneumonia. You know this. I know that's a lie. Amara knelt beside the chair. I heard someone tonight talking about her. A man named Victor Sokolov. He said she worked for him. That she knew too much. That she... Her voice cracked. That she went to the bottom of the Hudson. Baba's hands trembled in her lap. She looked away toward the window where the city lights flickered like dying stars. Your mother was brilliant, Baba said finally. She worked for Sokolov's shipping company. She did their books, managed their accounts. She thought it was legitimate at first, Import-export, normal business. And then she found discrepancies, money moving in patterns that made no sense, shell companies, false invoices. She dug deeper. Found evidence of trafficking, people, weapons, drugs, everything hidden in shipping manifests and dummy corporations. Amara's breath caught. She went to the FBI. She tried. Baba's voice was bitter. She gathered evidence, made copies, prepared to testify. But Sokolov found out. He had people everywhere, police, FBI, judges. The night before she was supposed to meet her contact, she disappeared. They found her body 3 days later, Baba continued, washed up near the Tappan Zee. The police said she jumped. Depression, single mother, financial stress. Case closed. But you knew, I knew, Baba's eyes glistened. But I had you to protect. You were 12, alone. If I'd fought, if I'd pushed, they would have come for you too. So I stayed silent. I took their blood money, the settlement they offered, and I raised you. I kept you safe. Amara's throat burned. The envelope's in the freezer. Guilt money, Baba spat. I took every penny and used it to give you what your mother wanted. Education, freedom, power. She would have wanted that. Amara stood, her mind racing. Mama kept evidence. She wouldn't have gone to the FBI with nothing. Where is it? Baba was silent for a long moment. Then she rose, moving slowly to the bedroom. She returned with a small lockbox, its metal surface scarred with age. Your mother gave this to me the day before she died, Baba said. She said if anything happened, I should keep it safe. Wait until you were old enough to decide what to do with it. She handed Amara the box. It was heavy, solid. A key hung from Baba's neck on a thin chain. She lifted it over her head and pressed it into Amara's palm. Be careful, Baba whispered. These people don't forgive. They don't forget. Amara's fingers closed around the key. Neither do I. Amara sat on her grandmother's floor with the lockbox open in front of her. Inside, 3 items waited like ghosts. A USB drive in a plastic case, a stack of photographs bound with a rubber band, and a birth certificate yellowed with age. She reached for the birth certificate first. Her hands shook as she unfolded it. Name, Amara Tatiana Volkova. Mother, Tatiana Ivanovna Volkova. Father, unknown place of birth, Brighton Beach. Brooklyn not Clark Volkova. Her mother's Russian surname, the one she'd abandoned when she fled whatever life she'd lived before Amara was born. The photographs came next. She flipped through them slowly. Tatiana, young and beautiful in a burgundy dress, standing beside a man in a designer suit. Viktor Sokolov, 30 years younger but unmistakable. The same sharp jaw, the same cold eyes. In another photo, Tatiana sat at a desk covered in ledgers, her expression focused. A third showed her with a group of men in an office, everyone smiling for the camera. Victor's hand rested on her shoulder, possessive. The final photograph stopped Amara's breath. Tatiana, visibly pregnant, standing alone on a Brighton Beach boardwalk. She looked terrified. Amara set the photos aside and picked up the USB drive. Her laptop was in her backpack. She booted it up, hands trembling, and inserted the drive. The files loaded slowly. Spreadsheets, scanned documents, audio recordings, video clips. Hundreds of files, meticulously organized and labeled. She opened the first spreadsheet. It was a financial record from 1993, tracking wire transfers from Sokolov Shipping International to accounts in Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, and Switzerland. Millions of dollars coded with innocuous labels, equipment, consulting, transport. Another file contained shipping manifests. Container 4471B, machine parts. But the weight was wrong, the destination suspicious. A handwritten note in the margin, her mother's handwriting. 14 women from Moldova. $10 each. Amara's stomach turned. She opened an audio file. Her mother's voice shaky but determined, speaking in Russian. October 12, 1994. I've confirmed 17 trafficking routes operating through Sokolov's network. Contacts in NYPD and FBI are on his payroll. I'm making copies of everything. If something happens to me, this evidence must reach. The recording cut off. Amara opened another file. A video, grainy and dark. A warehouse. Men loading crates. Victor's voice off-screen. Make sure they're sedated. Can't have them making noise at customs. She clicked through more files. Bank statements showing payments to judges and police officers. Photographs of forged documents. Lists of names. Witnesses who'd vanished. Whistleblowers who died in accidents. And at the bottom of the folder, a text document titled For Amara. She opened it. My darling girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this truth. Viktor Sokolov is a monster, and I helped him build his empire before I understood what it was. By the time I realized I was trapped, I tried to get us out. I tried to do the right thing. But he has too much power, too many connections. If I disappear, don't mourn me. Finish what I started. You're stronger than you know. You have my blood, my language, my fire. Destroy him, Malishka. For every girl in those containers, for every mother who never came home, I love you. I'm sorry. Be brave. Mama Mara sat in the darkness of her grandmother's living room, tears streaming down her face, her mother's words burning in her mind. She wasn't going to mourn, she was going to finish this. 3 days later, Amara returned to Lumiere for her evening shift. She'd uploaded every file from the USB drive to a secure cloud account, made copies, and sent encrypted packages to 2 lawyers she didn't know. If anything happened to her, the evidence would surface. Tonight, Viktor Sokolov was back. Table 7 again. Celebrating something. A merger, an acquisition, another victory for a man who'd built his fortune on suffering. Amara moved through the dining room with mechanical precision. She took orders, poured wine, cleared plates, and she waited. At 10 p.m., during the dessert course, she approached Victor's table. He was laughing at something one of his associates said, his face flushed with vodka and triumph. She placed a folded piece of paper beside his glass. Just a napkin to anyone watching. But Victor's eyes caught the motion. He unfolded it, still smiling. The smile died. Tatiana's daughter remembers everything. The Hudson, the Manifest, Container 4471B. October 12, 1994. I have the files. All of them. Victor's face went pale. He looked up slowly, his eyes finding hers across the table. Enjoy your dessert, Amara said in Russian. It may be your last. She walked away, her heart pounding but her steps steady. Behind her she heard Victor's chair scrape back. Excuse me, he said to his guests, his voice tight. She made it to the hallway before he caught her. His hand closed around her arm, spinning her to face him. His cologne was expensive, suffocating. Up close she could see the veins in his temples, the fury in his eyes. You have no idea what you're doing, he said in Russian, his voice low and deadly. Do you know who I am? What I'm capable of? I know exactly who you are, Amara replied, meeting his gaze. I know what you did to my mother. I know about the trafficking, the bribes, the murders. I have proof. His grip tightened. Proof can disappear. So can you, too late. She smiled, cold and sharp. I've already sent copies to people you can't touch. If I disappear, the files go public. Victor's jaw clenched. He leaned closer, his breath hot on her face. Your mother thought she was clever too. Look where that got her. She was clever, Amara said. She just didn't have what I have. And what's that? Nothing left to lose. Victor released her, stepping back. His expression shifted, calculating now, assessing. Everyone has something to lose. Your grandmother, for example. That apartment in the Bronx, 5th floor, isn't it? Ice flooded Amara's veins. Touch her and the files go out tonight, she said, her voice shaking. I'm not bluffing. Neither am I. Victor straightened his cuffs. Oh, you have 24 hours to bring me every copy of those files. Every drive, every backup, every sent email. Or your grandmother dies the same way your mother did. He walked back toward the dining room, his posture relaxed, as if they'd been discussing the weather. Amara stood frozen in the hallway, her hands trembling. She'd thought she had leverage. She'd thought the evidence would protect her. She'd been wrong. Amara's shift ended at midnight. She changed out of her uniform in the staff room, her movements robotic, her mind racing. Victor's threat echoed in her skull. 24 hours. She had to get to Baba, had to move her somewhere safe, somewhere Victor's people couldn't find her. She pushed through the kitchen exit into the alley. The October night was cold, the air sharp with approaching rain. 2 men stepped out of the shadows. They were large, professional, their faces blank. One wore a leather jacket. The other had a scar above his left eye. "Amara Clark," Leather Jacket said. Not a question. She backed toward the door. It was locked from the outside. Her phone was in her locker. "Mr. Sokolov would like to retrieve something," Scar said. "You're going to help us." "I don't have anything," she lied. "Your grandmother's apartment." "Let's go." "No." Her voice was steady, even as terror clawed at her throat. "You're not touching her," Leather Jacket smiled. "We're not asking." He stepped forward. Amara grabbed a metal trash can lid, swinging it hard. It connected with his shoulder. He barely flinched. Scar lunged. She dodged, but he was fast. His arm locked around her neck, cutting off her air. She thrashed, her vision darkening, and then lights. Bright and sudden, a car pulling into the alley. "Police!" A voice shouted. "Let her go!" The men released her instantly. She fell to her knees, gasping. When she looked up, they were gone, vanished into the darkness like smoke. A restaurant security guard jogged over, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. "You okay?" "I saw them from the camera feed." Amara nodded, unable to speak. Her throat burned, her hands scraped and bleeding. The guard helped her up. "You need to file a report." "Those guys—" "I'm fine," she managed. "Just a mugging." They didn't get anything. The guard looked skeptical but didn't push. "Let me walk you to the subway." "Thanks." But as they walked, Amara's mind was already racing ahead. Victor knew where Baba lived. He had people watching. And Amara had just lost her only leverage. The USB drive was still at Baba's apartment. She had to get there first. She had to. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your grandmother says hello. You have 12 hours now. Bring the files to Pier 76 alone or she dies." Attached was a photo. Baba sitting in a chair in an unfamiliar room, her face pale but defiant. A man's hand rested on her shoulder. Amara's legs buckled. She caught herself against a brick wall, the world tilting. They had her. Victor had Baba, and Amara had nothing. Amara sat on the subway platform at 2 a.m., her phone clutched in shaking hands. The photo of Baba stared back at her, terrified but alive. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. She'd failed. She'd thought she could outsmart Victor, thought the evidence would be enough. Instead, she'd put the only person she loved in danger. The platform was empty except for a homeless man sleeping on a bench and a rat skittering along the tracks. Amara felt hollow, scraped clean of hope. Her mother's voice whispered in memory, "Be brave, Malishka." But Tatiana's bravery had gotten her killed. What made Amara think she'd fare any better? She opened her photos, scrolling to the picture she kept hidden in a locked album. Her mother, young and laughing, holding baby Amara in Brighton Beach. The sun was setting behind them, painting everything gold. Tatiana had died trying to save people she'd never met. Girls in containers, women stolen from their lives, children sold like merchandise. And Amara was ready to give up after one threat. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. The train roared into the station, its lights cutting through the darkness. She didn't board. Instead, she walked to the station exit, her mind clearing with each step. Victor wanted the files. Fine, she'd give him files, just not the ones he expected. She pulled out her phone and opened her cloud storage. The evidence was backed up in 3 locations. Victor could have one set of files, corrupted, useless enough to buy time, and while he was checking them, she'd be executing the real plan. Her mother hadn't raised a victim. She'd raised a fighter. Amara took a cab to a 24-hour internet cafe in Midtown. The space was dingy, smelling of coffee and sweat, filled with gamers and insomniacs. She paid cash for 2 hours of computer time and logged into her cloud account from a burner email. First, she downloaded the evidence files onto a fresh USB drive. Then she created a second drive, identical in appearance, but filled with corrupted data and password-protected files that would take days to crack. Next, she searched her mother's documents for something she remembered seeing: a name. Marina Volkov, investigative journalist, The New York Times. Tatiana had written about her in the text file, "If I don't survive, find Marina." "She's the only one I trust." Amara searched the Times archives. Marina Volkov had written exposés on Russian organized crime, human trafficking networks, and corruption in the NYPD. Her most recent article was from 2 months ago, "The Ghosts of Brighton Beach: How Russian Mafia Infiltrated American Business." Amara drafted an email, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Ms. Volkov, my name is Amara Volkova. My mother, Tatiana Volkova, contacted you in 1994 about Viktor Sokolov and his trafficking network. She was murdered before she could testify. I have the evidence she gathered: financial records, shipping manifests, witness testimony, audio and video proof of Sokolov's operations spanning 30 years. He's holding my grandmother hostage. I have 10 hours to deliver the files or she dies. I'm sending you encrypted copies now. If anything happens to me, publish everything. Please help us." AV. She attached the encrypted files and hit send at 3:47 a.m. Her phone buzzed immediately. "Unknown number, Towers. Pier 76, don't be late." Amara replied, "I'll be there." "Let me speak to my grandmother first." 2 minutes passed. Then a video call came through. Baba's face filled the screen, bruised but conscious. She was tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Concrete walls, dim lighting, the smell of salt water visible in the condensation on the camera lens. "Baba," Amara breathed. "Don't give them anything," Baba said in Russian, her voice hoarse. "I'm an old woman. I've lived enough." "Don't." The screen went dark. Another text, 8 hours. "Come alone." Amara sat back, her heart hammering. Marina Volkov hadn't responded yet. The files were sent, but there was no guarantee they'd be published in time. She had one more card to play, a dangerous one. She pulled up Victor's contact information, publicly available through his company website, and composed a message. "I'll bring the files to Pier 76, but I want proof my grandmother leaves alive. Have her walk out of that warehouse before I hand over anything. Once she's safe, you get the drive. If you kill her, the files go public in 6 hours. I've set up a dead man switch. If I don't enter a code every hour, everything uploads automatically to every major news outlet. Your choice, deal or exposure." She hit send and waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. At 4:23 a.m., Victor replied, "Fine. Your grandmother walks when I verify the files are complete. Pier 76, 10 a.m. sharp, no police. No tricks, or you both die." Amara exhaled slowly. She had a deal. It was a terrible deal, negotiated with a murderer who had no reason to keep his word, but it was a chance. And in the USB drive in her pocket was the corrupted bait that would buy her enough time to spring the trap. Pier 76 stretched into the Hudson like a grey finger, abandoned and rusting. The sun was high and cold, the October wind sharp off the water. Amara stood at the entrance, the fake USB drive in her jacket pocket, her phone clutched in her other hand. At 9:58 a.m., a black SUV pulled up. Victor stepped out, flanked by the 2 men from the alley. Behind them, a second vehicle. Baba was pulled from the back seat, her hands zip-tied, her face pale. "Amara," Baba called out. "I'm here," Amara shouted back. "Let her go, Victor." Victor walked forward slowly, his hands in the pockets of his charcoal coat. He looked calm, almost amused. "Show me the files first." Amara held up the USB drive. "Everything's here." 30 years of evidence. Now release her. Not until I verify, he extended his hand. Not until she's in a cab and on her way to safety. They stared at each other across 15 feet of concrete. The wind howled between them, carrying the smell of diesel and dead fish. Victor smiled. You're just like your mother, stubborn, stupid. My mother was brave, Amara said. You were just a coward who murdered a woman because she had a conscience. His smile vanished. Careful, girl. I'm done being careful. Amara's voice rang out clear and strong. I'm done being invisible. You killed my mother because she tried to expose you. You've spent 30 years trafficking women, bribing officials, destroying lives. And you thought you'd get away with it forever. I have, Victor said. I am. And after today, there'll be no evidence left. No witnesses. Just another tragedy. A waitress and her grandmother killed in a mugging gone wrong. Except, Amara said, I didn't come alone. Victor's eyes narrowed. I don't see anyone. You're not looking in the right place. From behind a shipping container, Marina Volkov stepped out, her phone held high, recording. She was 50, sharp-eyed, her grey hair pulled back severely. Behind her, 3 more people emerged, a cameraman, a photographer, and a man in an FBI windbreaker. Marina Volkov, New York Times, Marina announced, her voice cutting through the wind. Mr. Sokolov, I have some questions about your involvement in human trafficking operations dating back to 1994. Victor's face went white. You have no proof. I have everything, Marina said. Financial records, shipping manifests, video testimony, audio recordings of you discussing murder and trafficking. Thanks to Amara Volkova and her mother, we have 30 years of evidence. The FBI agent stepped forward. Victor Sokolov, you're under arrest for human trafficking, racketeering, murder, and conspiracy. Victor's men reached for their weapons. Police officers poured from behind containers and vehicles, weapons drawn. Don't move, an officer shouted. Leatherjacket froze. Scar raised his hands slowly. Victor stood perfectly still, his face a mask of rage. His eyes locked on Amara's. You stupid little girl. You think this ends here? I have lawyers, connections. I'll be out in 24 hours. Maybe, Amara said. But the story goes live in 10 minutes. Every news outlet in the country. Your name, your crimes, your victims. 30 years of evidence all in one place. Even your lawyers can't bury that. Marina smiled. The article drops at 10:15. Empire of Shadows, how Victor Sokolov built his fortune on human suffering. It's already been fact-checked and vetted. We have testimony from 17 victims, all willing to go on record. Victor's composure cracked. He lunged toward Amara, fury twisting his features. 2 officers tackled him. He hit the concrete hard, screaming in Russian. Curses, threats, denials. Amara watched him thrash this man who'd murdered her mother, who'd stolen countless lives. He looked small now, pathetic. An officer cut Baba's zip ties. She stumbled forward, and Amara caught her, holding her tight. You did it, Malishka, Baba whispered, tears streaming down her face. Your mother would be so proud. Amara closed her eyes, her grandmother's frail body shaking in her arms. In the distance, sirens wailed. Victor was being dragged to a police car, still screaming. The sun broke through the clouds, cold and bright on the water. It was over. 6 months later, Amara stood in a federal courtroom in downtown Manhattan. The room was packed. Journalists, victims' families, activists, curious onlookers. At the defendant's table, Victor Sokolov sat in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his face gaunt. The judge read the verdict. On all 73 counts, the jury finds the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, cheers, crying. Amara sat in the front row beside Marina and Baba, her hands folded in her lap. She felt numb, emptied out. Victor was sentenced to 40 years without parole. He'd tried to buy his way out, but the evidence was overwhelming. 17 victims had testified. The financial records were ironclad. The audio and video recordings were damning. His empire collapsed within weeks. Assets seized, companies dissolved, associates arrested. The trafficking network that had operated for 3 decades was dismantled piece by piece. After the sentencing, Amara and Baba visited Tatiana's grave in Greenwood Cemetery. The headstone was simple: Tatiana Ivanovna Volkova, beloved mother. 1965-1994. Amara placed a bouquet of white roses on the grave. Beside them she set a newspaper clipping, the Times article framed. Empire of Shadows in bold letters, with Tatiana's photograph prominently displayed. "We did it, Mama," Amara whispered. "And we finished what you started." Baba squeezed her hand. "She's resting now, finally." The settlement from the federal case, restitution from Victor's seized assets, was substantial. Amara used it to finish law school and establish the Tatiana Volkova Foundation, dedicated to supporting families of whistleblowers and trafficking survivors. She graduated from NYU the following spring, top of her class. At the ceremony, she wore a dress in emerald green, her mother's favorite color. Marina Volkov won a Pulitzer Prize for her reporting. She dedicated it to Tatiana, and Amara never went back to Lumiere. She didn't need to be invisible anymore. 1 year after Victor's conviction, Amara returned to Pier 76. The space had been transformed into a memorial garden for trafficking victims. Bronze plaques lined the walkway, each bearing a name, a face, a story cut short. She found her mother's plaque near the water's edge. Tatiana's photograph smiled up at her, young and beautiful and alive. Amara knelt, tracing the engraved letters with her fingers. "I see you now, Mama. I understand what you tried to do, why you couldn't run, why you fought." The Hudson stretched before her, gray and endless. Somewhere beneath those waves her mother had taken her last breath. But Tatiana hadn't drowned in vain. 73 convictions. A network destroyed. Hundreds of victims given justice, their stories finally heard. Amara stood facing the water. She spoke in Russian, her voice steady. "Power doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing everything. You taught me that. You gave me the language, the courage, the truth. I was never powerless. I was just waiting for the right moment." Behind her, footsteps on gravel. She turned. A young woman approached hesitantly, maybe 19, with dark circles under her eyes. "Are you Amara Volkova?" the woman asked. "I am. I read about you." "About what you did?" The woman's voice shook. "I'm being threatened. My boss, he's doing things, illegal things, and I have evidence, but I'm scared. I don't know what to do." Amara studied her face, the fear, the desperation, the fragile hope. "You're not alone," Amara said. "Tell me everything." The woman began to speak. Amara listened, her mind already cataloguing details, building strategy, planning the fight. This was her purpose now. Her inheritance, not silence and invisibility, but truth spoken in every language, in every room. No matter who was listening, her mother had planted the seed. Amara would tend the garden. Behind them the memorial plaques gleamed in the afternoon sun. Names remembered. Lives honored. Justice served. And somewhere in the wind off the Hudson, Tatiana's voice whispered, "Be brave, Malashka. You always were.